in the Bible, according to the words of the apostles and the words of Jesus. And the reason that this is important is because today, in year 2011, over 2,000 years, or approximately 2,000 years, have passed since the faith was first delivered by the apostles. And I will be the first person to tell you that I do not have all the answers. And if anyone should lead you to believe that they have all the answers, they're misleading you. And the reason I say that is because the Apostle Paul, when he wrote to the believers in Corinth, wrote saying, "We see as through a glass darkly." And in another place, the Apostle Paul said, "I press on toward the high calling, that I may know him who apprehended me." So, I will never say I have all the answers. And I would suggest, if anybody should lead you to believe they have all the answers, it should create doubt. On the other hand, the areas where we do have some answers, I believe we should not be negligent. And the question that is in my mind is this: do we practice church based on what we find here? By these words? Or is our practice of church based on a tradition? Is our practice of church based on what everybody does? Well, faith is not based on everybody. Faith is based on what God has said. Faith comes when we understand, perceive, and grasp what God has said. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to understand everything in this lifetime. Paul never made that claim. I wouldn't make that claim. There's always room for learning. There's always room for growing. But in some respects, maybe the apostles did leave a fairly clear record. And the question is, well, in regard to the practice of church, today in 2011, is our practice of faith as a church or individual churches reflective, or does it reflect what the apostles originally delivered through the New Testament? Now, 2,000 years approximately have passed since the apostles delivered these epistles, and since Luke wrote his account of Acts, and since the Gospels were recorded. And in this 2,000 year span of time, there has been many controversies and not only has there been many controversies, there's probably been wars. There's been people who've been put to death over how this has been interpreted. How it's been interpreted. So, it's important from the outset that we understand our goal, my goal, your goal, anybody's goal should not include trying to hurt other people through an interpretation. And for all practical purposes, we do go on our interpretation according to what we understand. I go on an interpretation. You go on an interpretation. Ministers go on an interpretation. And even in the New Testament, there were times when people misinterpreted the words of the apostles. So they went on an interpretation. The thing is, there's nothing wrong with having an interpretation. There is something wrong with making or creating an interpretation that is designed to hurt people. So that's not my interest at all. Our goal in interpreting Scripture should be to help, to build up, to edify people. Not destroy, tear down, and hurt people. Now, it's possible that in the process of helping people, edifying people, it's possible that there may be times when truth is presented. And truth, and you can ask the Jews about this, the Jews of the New Testament times and Old Testament times, truth sometimes can be painful. But that's not a bad thing. Sometimes we need to hear the truth. But the intent of truth is not to hurt people. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." The question is, do we know the truth? See, it's not enough to say, well, the pastor studied. Well, the pastor, he gets paid. You know, the New Testament really doesn't say very much about pastors at all. It does say each one must give an account for himself to the Lord. Each one. That's me, that's you, that's everybody. So, my endeavor here is to see whether we can get a handle of what the apostles considered to be church and what the apostles instituted as church services or assemblies in the early Christian church. So, the first two verses that I want to look at is 2 Peter 2:13.